stuff over in Afghanistan. And I said, wow, yeah, I can do drawings, and we could email them back and forth and do stuff like that. We flew back, we met him, and the first thing he did, he walked, he says, is that your wife over there? And I said, yes. And he says, okay, so he walked over and says, are you okay with him going to Iraq and Afghanistan? This was in 2008. And my wife said, yeah, sure. I mean, I thought maybe she's like, well, what's it going to be like? Is it going to be, you know, is it going to be in a dangerous area? Is it going to be shot at? What's going to be living? No, I was like, yeah, okay, good. And so step forward a little bit. It came to the point where I didn't know if I was going to have this job or not. And then all of a sudden, I got this email, and all of a sudden it says, we sent you a one-way ticket to Baghdad. Okay, because I had to go to Baghdad for an orientation thing, and then from there I went to Afghanistan. And I said, well, what will I be doing? And he goes, well, you'll be a country manager. I said, what's that? And he says, I don't know, just make it up as you go. And I said, are you kidding me? So I went and got all my shots. They didn't tell me to get shots. I went and got all my shots. My wife and I tried to close down my business, tried to get everything done. My boy that was at the Naval Academy and my one in the Army said, Dad, get, you know, brown boots instead of black boots and won't show the dirt. And I thought, what do I care about the dirt? You know? So I pack up all my stuff. I get on a plane. I get there and I get to Georgia. And I'm in the Atlanta airport, and I'd never been in the military. You know, my family had been in it, but I hadn't. I had no clue of anything. I was just a happy-go-lucky, you know, like Jackson Brown, a happy idiot, just wandering through, doing my business and everything. I mean, I was a patriot, but I, like I said, had no experience with it. At that time, none of my boys had been in the military to a long extent. And so I called my wife and said, is this really something I want to do? I had $300 in my pocket, a one-way ticket, and no contract signed. And I was flying to Dubai and then to Iraq, just on a word, you know, I hope. So I got over there. Let's go to the next one. There we go. So when I got over there, this is kind of what I end up looking like when I get to Afghanistan. But when I got over to Iraq, to Dubai, I go into Dubai, I didn't know where to go, who I was going to be with, how things were going to work out. And so from that point, I said, wow. And so I started looking around, and I saw all these big, bulky guys, and of course, they were all, you know, personal security guys, right, from America, you know, got the big muscles and the tight t-shirts on and stuff. I go, all right, you know, here's some guys from America. So I said, where are you guys staying at? And they told me, and I said, oh, I think I'm staying there too. So they said, hey, great, you know, you can come with us. And so they kind of took me under their wing, and they kind of like, who's this old man, right? At that time, I was like 58, I think, yeah, 59. And so, I mean, I always stayed in pretty good shape, but they, you know, these guys are huge. And so they took me there, we went to the hotel, came back, and then when we went to get on this plane, it was called Jupiter Airline. Oh, yeah. And so I said, everybody's in the same class, there's no first class, no last class, no everything. And he says, when we go to the plane, even though you got a ticket, you got to push people out of the way to get on the plane, because if you don't get on the plane, you're not going to go. And I said, no, I got a ticket. And he goes, no, no. And so we go downstairs, this is at Dubai, to get out to this Jupiter Airlines, and it had doors kind of like with these windows here, and they just opened up, and everybody just shot towards the plane. I said, are you kidding me? And people are bumping and everything like that, and people are knocking people down, and little ladies are tripping you and everything like that, trying to get on the plane. So obviously I was, you know, please, I don't want to be rude, I don't want to be rude. So I get on the plane, and one of the PSD guys saved me a seat. And so I said, well, I told you, Rich, I told you, man, it's all for one and one for all. You know, you gotta get on this thing and go. And so we get on the plane, fly over there. Like I said, it was almost like something you see on a movie, except there was no loose chickens flying all around like on a bus. But it was, you know, everything and everybody was on there. And the BO was like really strong and everything like that. Of course, they don't serve any treats or anything. So we're coming into Iraq. Let's see if we got the next one here.
Before I give you
the
picture,
okay.
I'm putting this in your hand.
Oh, there we go. So,
just don't walk in front of the speaker.
Don't walk in front of the speaker. Okay, so before we're coming into Baghdad, this little girl from Nepal, she's the only stewardess on the plane. She's sitting down in front of me, and she's getting herself all buckled in, and she looked really nervous. And I said, do you speak English? She goes, yes. And I said, what are you all nervous about? She says, you've never flown into Baghdad before? I don't know if any of you guys have done this before. But I said, no, this is kind of all new to me. And she goes, well, we do a corkscrew landing. And I said, corkscrew landing? What's that? And she goes, well, we kind of turn and circle down, and it's a controlled crash. And so I said, are you kidding me? And so just about the time she said that, the plane makes this big, huge turn and just starts circling around, coming down like this. people started throwing up all over in the plane. I could smell it. It was just flying around and everything. I said, oh. And then just about the time we were ready to crash, leveled out and they landed. And I said, what's all that about? And they said, well, if you come in like a normal approach, it's easier for the enemy to shoot you down. So we do this kind of evasive thing when we come down. I thought, wow, is this something I really want to be signed up for? And so, let's see if we can go back here. Next one. What we got here? Keep going. So, yeah, keep going. Those are ones just to put the close out of there. Okay, we can stick that one. So when I get to Iraq, I'm thinking, oh man. And so I was with the PSD guys. All of a sudden, they got pulled off to another direction. I'm standing there by myself, and an Iraqi soldier comes up to me and goes, "Passport, please." And I go, I hand it to him. And I always heard, and I'm sitting there going like this, you know, with it, because I always heard that if they take your passport, you're done for. You know, nothing's going to happen. He says, looks at my passport, and he goes, "Visa no good. Come with me." Sound like the soup Nazi off of Steinfeld, you know. So they take me over there, and they sat me down, and they go in there, and they talk about 10, 15 minutes, and they come back out. $150 more. Need new visa. So I knew they were shaking me down, but I only had $300. And so I said, okay, give me the three, you know, here we go. I guess got to get this stamp. So I thought, wow, okay, dodge that bullet. So then I look out in the mass of people, and I see these people holding up a sign, and it says, Rich Walton. I go by Mr. Rich, and I'll tell you why I do that. But they go up and down, and I go, oh, good, there's the guy. So I go over there, and the first thing they do is they go, Rich. I go, yeah, hey, great, welcome to Iraq, and we're going to be your security detail for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And I said, oh, okay. So we show you the ins and outs of how we do construction and what we do and how all that kind of stuff. And I go, okay, great. And they hand me this thing, and I go, is that like a bulletproof vest? And they go, yeah, just put it on. I go, well, how do I put it on? And so I didn't know how to put this thing on. So they helped me get it all on and everything, and I'm sitting in there. And so we walk out to the car, and I go, okay, this is great. Well, they do it. They kind of do this 3-car thing, you know, where you're in one car and there's 2 other cars, and they kind of leapfrog all the way through traffic. And so we're driving through Baghdad, and the first car goes up. He stops. The guys jump out. They all hold their AK-47s. They stop traffic. My car comes along, and then the next one leapfrogs, and you go all around like that. And they're going the wrong way. You know, they're going against traffic. We're going up on the curb. You know, we're doing everything like that. And I said, are you guys kidding me? And we go like that. And so then we finally get to the house that I was staying at. And there's just high concrete walls all the way around, barbed wire, guys standing on the roof with guns. And I go, you mean I'm not going to be like on a military base? And they go, no, we're in the city. We're in the red zone. And I go, are you kidding me? And they go, yeah, just don't go out for a walk. And so I said, okay. So I spent 3 weeks over there. And I want to make sure I'm good on my time here. So I spent 3 weeks there and kind of learned the ins and outs. The worst, it's in my book, and I was already referring to that, but one of the worst things I had to do was try to get my DOD badge. They never gave me one before I came over, so I ended up, through a series of events, ended up having to fly all the way up to Frankfurt, Germany, all by myself, and come all the way back to get all that taken care of. But, so we went and had to get my fingerprints done and all that type of stuff. So finally I get all that stuff taken care of over in Iraq, and they said, okay, we're going to send you over to Afghanistan now. And so I go, okay, great. So I get on a plane, again, by myself. I go to Dubai by myself. I get on a plane, and I land in Kabul, Afghanistan. And already Kabul felt kind of nicer and easier for me to deal with because of... and so it was kind of neat about the different scenery and stuff that we had there, because it just felt, I don't know, it just felt different. It felt kind of almost kind of like they hated me to always say this, but it kind of reminded me of Southern California, but out on the desert. But so we got out there, and they took me down through the street. The same scenario. You're driving down the street, crossing over lanes, doing all this stuff, and I had some of the same similar PSD guys I had in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and they're Christian Lebanese. And as we're going down the road, they're all speaking. I only took a little French in school. I mean, I don't, you know, hardly anything. But I kind of said, are you guys speaking French? And they go, yes, Mr. Rich, it's our secret language. And I said, your secret language? Yes. He says, the Afghans and the Iraqis, they may know English. Obviously, they know Arabic. And the Afghans know Pashtun and Dari, which are their languages, but nobody knows French. And so I go, oh, bonjour, très bien, merci. Okay, so that was our secret language. And there I show up to this house, Let me see if I can find it here. Well, let's just stay with that. I'll get into the school. So I show up at this house that I went to, and there again, it's not on a base. I said, this is some of the project I did in Afghanistan. I'll get to. This was a university building that I built, and this was all for girls. Unfortunately, it's not for girls anymore. But it was kind of a neat deal at the time. But so I got to Afghanistan, and I think we're going to have to go back here to a little bit farther. Let me get back here. Let's keep going. And, okay. So, some of the, I'll just kind of skip ahead a little bit. So some of the projects, people ask me, said, what did you do over there? And so for the first time I went over there, I worked for a contractor, and my job was to find construction jobs, bid on them, and then complete the construction. My second time that I went over to Afghanistan, and that's when I was over there from 2010 through 2015, I built different projects for the government and for the locals. So I had kind of two hats that I wore. One hat was that I was out doing humanitarian type of work, building schools and stuff out in the villages and health clinics. But when I'm talking about a school, I'm talking about a building maybe as big as this room. Except for that last picture you saw of the university. That was the women's dorm in Herat. That was a huge. It was like 50,000 square feet that we built so that the girls could come and stay in that, and then they could go to the university in the city of Herat, which is over on the Iranian border, and then you know, to get better educated. But as soon as the Taliban took over, we went back to where no girl over the age of 8 years old can be educated. So all this work that we've done with all the schools we built, they might be sourced for something else, or they might just be sitting there just, you know, wasting away. But some of the projects that I did do, like on the one before that, you saw me in front of a, can we go back one? Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I did do over there is I built like airfields and hangars for like the Predators and the Raptors and stuff like that, for because I was spending almost all my time on the Pakistan border, from way down below to way up top, and then I did spend a little bit of time when they were talking about Helmand and those with the Marines and stuff there, and then over on the Iranian border, over on that side with the Italians and the Spanish. But so I built these fields. No one ever thinks about who builds the place that these things land on, they park on, the tents and assembly stuff. So this is kind of some of the work I did, and they asked me, would you like your picture taken in front of one? And I said, yes, I did. And so it was always exciting to see them take off like this. And this is a Hellfire missile right there. And then come back with not one on it. I mean, that was always kind of cool to me, because we were always being shelled all the time. One of the bases I stayed at was called Rocket City, and we got shelled and rocketed every day. And so it was kind of nice, because we'd get hit just like they did, you know, with China and Korea and then Vietnam. They'd hit us and they'd run back across the border and to gain refuge over there in Pakistan. So I did that. The next one, I would build airfields for these little smaller planes like that. So we had those. So sometimes I'd go out to these remote bases, and there'd be a guy out there with long hair, kind of hippie looking guy, and he'd have his skateboard and he's skating up and down the little runway thing that I would make for him. And I said, so what's the prerequisite for getting this job? Being a good video game player? And he'd go, exactly. And so, you know, they were flying these things off all the time, going up around, protecting the bases and doing those type of things. Some of the other, go to the next one, some of the other things I did was guard towers. And so, you know, when we were building the bases, we did these guard towers, and then those are called HESCO walls. Some of you guys might be familiar with those. They're just these big, giant things. A guy became a multi-millionaire that invented those things. And there's kind of a mesh screen with a canvas, and you fill them full of dirt, and it's a way of getting a perimeter wall up real quick. And then we use this kind of Connex material to make these guard towers, and sometimes I'd make them three stories high. Okay, the next one. Okay, so sometimes we make them out of metal, sometimes we make them out of concrete. The one thing that the Afghans can really do is they can really build a good stone wall. And so they're really good at that. To keep in mind that 80% of the people in Afghanistan, including everybody, cannot read or write. their own language or any language. And so the difficulty became pretty paramount when you're trying to ask somebody to measure something or do something and they just kind of like, you know, what? And so I had to come up with a lot of different things to do that. So sometimes we, of course, we try to use the materials we had available, or we would have stuff flown in with helicopters, because most of the roads over there are non-existent, or they're there half the season and then they're washed out and they're gone. And so most everything we did over there, for most part, was with helicopters, okay? Yeah. So yeah, this right here, I'll tell you a quick story on this one right here. This, I was, finally when I got to Afghanistan, I'm sitting in this tent, and I'm just back there working, doing these other big projects like that for the Predators and stuff like that. And this colonel comes walking in one day and he says, "Is there anybody in here who knows how to draw?" And the senior sergeant at the time, he was an Air Force guy, goes, "Yeah, old Mr. Rich in the back." And so he walks back there and he says, "Are you Mr. Rich?" And I go, "Yeah." And he says, "You know how to draw?" And I go, "Yeah." He says, "Can you do a project for me?" And I go, "Well, at that time I was working for the Air Force, and they had an engineering department up at Bagram, and I always worked in small remote bases." And I said, "Well, give me the information, I'll send it up to Bagram and they'll work on it." And he goes, "I ain't got time for that." He said, "We just had a base overrun, and this is an outpost called Outpost Mace, and we need to rebuild everything and get everything done." And I said, "Okay, well, I guess I can do that for you." And I said, "So how long do what do you need?" He says, "I need 4 buildings. And I went, "Wow, okay, they're simple buildings, but," he said, "I need them right away." And I said, "Okay, when do you need them?" He says, "By tomorrow." I said, "By tomorrow?" And I said, "Are you kidding me?" And he goes, "No." So, to make a long story short, I drank all the energy drinks I had and all the coffee that I could get my hands on that night. And when he came in the next morning, it looked like I was like this, okay? I mean, I could type the typewriter without even having to move my hands. I'm surprised I didn't give myself a heart attack. And so he came in, I handed him the drawings. He said, "Hey, we really appreciate that." And also I had to do a materials list because everything had to be hauled up. Okay, you want to show the next one? To the site by helicopter. One more. And so, right there. So these are some of the sites that I was dealing with. You can rotate it like 90. There we go. Upside down, almost. There we go. So this is kind of what the building sites look like. And the only way to get there, for most part, was either by goat or by helicopter. And so we would drop everything in with our supplies and everything with helicopters. And it got to be after about the 2nd year, I was basically walking around with a sleeping bag and a backpack, and I was just hop, skipping, jumping all over the countryside. But we got this build. He was really excited about it. About 2 weeks later, the first sergeant says to me, he says, "Hey Rich, we got some stuff to pick up out at the airfield. Can you drive your little pickup out there?" They gave me a little pickup. And I said, "Yeah, sure." And so I said, "I got a package to pick up." So I'm out there, and I'm just kind of stupid, silly civilian, and I'm standing along there, and here comes the C-130 comes in, it lands, and this is just like right out of the movies. And so the back tailgate comes down, bzzz, dunk. This guy comes walking off the back tailgate with 3 cases of energy drinks. And he goes, "You Mr. Walton?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Compliments of the colonel." So he gave me these energy drinks, and I was really excited to get them. And then on my way back to my tent, I got thinking, oh my goodness, if 60 Minutes or anybody ever knows about this, what did that cost? I mean, I hope they were picking something else up down here, because otherwise this plane flew all the way from Germany down here to give old Mr. Rich 3 cases of energy drinks. And so maybe some of you guys had some experiences like that with the military, but obviously they must have picked something else up. But when I was getting those, I just thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So those are just like some of the things that happened to me. Keep going, next one. Yeah, keep going. That's another guard tower that I did over there. Okay, so rotate this. This is on top of another mountain. It's called, it was up there and it was oversight. And so some of you guys might know the terminology is called OP, observation post, or something like that. And so somebody had to build all this stuff. And so I was like the one-man guy. And so I'd fly up there, I'd make sketches, I'd end up working, going down, coming with the locals. And so a lot of times when I was going on you don't want to call them field trips, I guess I should call them missions. But when I was in Kabul and some of these places, I had to go outside the wire. And that's probably one of the reasons why I got to see so much that I did, because I had a couple times people say, well, we never get engineers or architects outside the wire. And I said, well, I got sons in the military, and I felt always kind of bad about not going to Vietnam and doing my duty, and I feel like now I can maybe, you know, step up and do a little bit for some of the people. So this was a U.S. outpost base, even though you see the Afghan flag on there, because we had both people there. And so these guys, these gentlemen standing right next to me are Nuristanis. And so a lot of times people would say, how can you drive around in cars across the country? Because a lot of times, sometimes I had the military watching me, sometimes I didn't, sometimes I was driving myself, sometimes, you know, I was going with the locals. And so what they did is they said, I said, well, because there's a tribe up in northeastern Afghanistan called the Nuristani, and they profess to be descendants of Alexander the Great. And they have the dishwater blonde hair, and they have the blue eyes, and so these are a couple of the Nuristanis there. They're laughing because they said, you look like our brother. And so they would always dress me up. I have the little Piccolo hat on, and they'd always kind of dress me up in the same similar time of clothes. And then if I was out in the city or I was being challenged by the police, which normally were corrupt and would kidnap you, my drivers and interpreters would always say, well, he's a businessman from Nuristan. And so we're up there on this little outpost. Those mountains in the back, that's Pakistan. And so we're up at about 9,000 feet. So a lot of this stuff was up really high. As a matter of fact, sometimes they were concerned about me because they said, hey, at your age, old man, being up here, we might have to get you some medicine, so, you know, because you might get elevation sickness, you know, because I was always up in the high mountains. Okay, next one. Yeah. So another one of the projects that I always did was these containers. And I'd never seen those before until I went over there. I mean, obviously I've seen them on the highway, but not with windows and doors in them. And so those are like the size of what you see on the trucks. And so what we could do with those, we could put those on trailers, or we could pick them up with helicopters and take them out and drop them off. This was a base I built for the Afghans. There again, I had two kind of responsibilities as far as the military. I built stuff for the US, and I built stuff for the Afghans. We can get into politics later, but obviously, for most part, the stuff I built for the Afghans was much nicer than the stuff that I built for the Americans. We'd be in tents, gravel road, being flooded, mud and yuck all over the place. And then across the wire for the Afghan base, we'd have paved streets, lights, hardened buildings, DFACs, grocery stores, you know, that type of thing. So I did kind of get into a situation where we'd always get a different command, and I'm sure a lot of you guys in the military do that. When the new colonel comes in or the new general comes in, the rules change, probably, you know. So we had one where he said we couldn't have energy drinks anymore because guys were going out and have heart attacks. And I left one of my interpreters and one of my bodyguards, the Lebanese Christian. I was explaining that to him, and he goes, Mr. Rich, really, you only have one thing to worry about, and that's lead poisoning. And I said, lead? You mean what, from the water? He goes, no, from the bullets. And so I go, oh, nice. And so I would build these little camps, and we'd have those things all over the place, and they'd work out pretty good for the most part, but Afghans weren't really used to living in stuff like this. And so I had one time where an Afghan colonel brought me out to a place, and he showed me one of these buildings that we had as a bathroom, and the floor was like down 4 feet into the ground. I mean, it was down there, and he pulls me and he goes, hey, Mr. Rich, he said, what do we do about this? And I said, man, I said, your whole floor collapsed. It's all way down there, you know, like 4 feet down there. And I said, I guess you just get a ladder. And I said, the toilet was down there and the shower was down there. And he gives me a big hug. He says, oh yeah, you know us Afghans, we're really hard on buildings. And so they were doing that all the time. Or like, I got into it with a lot of my superiors, but they were putting Western toilets. And I go, why are you guys putting in Western toilets? We don't even use those toilets. And because they don't use toilets. They don't use toilet paper. And so they would always sticking rocks and bottles and stuff in the toilets and flushing and clogging them up, you know. So one time, maybe someday I'll spend more time on this, but the State Department, from my experience, I'm sure there's some wonderful people with the State Department, but from my experience, it wasn't so much. And so I had one where they came out and said, Mr. Rich, we need to have you take us out to this village because we got a new program where we're going to teach everybody how to use toilet paper. I said, oh, good one with that one. And then the State Department's all excited, and they're all like, okay, let's go. So, because they always had me, they always came to me because I always had the people that could take them out to the different places. Because the U.S. military didn't always go to every place in Afghanistan. It was broken up into sectors, and so there was different types of people that would take you out to different places. So they'd come to me and say, hey, you got anybody who can take us out to here? And I go, well, that's the Italian sector. We got Italians. If you do this, if you do that. So anyway, to make a long story short, we take the people out there. They explain. They go through this huge PowerPoint slideshow showing all, and they're all sitting there in their tents, just kind of looking at this stuff. All the Afghan army guys, and they're just kind of looking over each other, and they kind of look at me and go, you know. And I said, hey guys, just listen to it, okay? So I said, you know, when you go to check up on another couple of weeks, kind of let me know how it goes. So I was standing at the tarmac to catch a helicopter one day, and I happened to see one of the State Department people there, and I go, how did that work out for you with the teaching everybody how to use toilet paper? And she goes, well, they kind of got the idea, but what they were doing was wrapping the rocks with the toilet paper and then wiping themselves and then putting it into the toilet. And I said, yeah. I said, you know, I kind of told you guys, but you know, I love the people dearly, and when I lived in a house in Kabul, I had a lady there that was my cleaning lady, and she would come in and she'd clean the house. I had a little tiny house that was actually built in the city. I lived in the city. I didn't live on a base. I had down the street a ways was the American Embassy, and that's another story, but I could hear their rock parties going all night long. You could buy alcohol on the embassy. The problem was we were all under, some of you might be familiar with General Order Number 1, we're not supposed to drink. And so, real problem. And of course the French, the Germans, the Italians, and the Spanish, they all can drink. And so there's a lot of issues where some of our soldiers and airmen and people got in trouble with those things. But anyway, so one day I decided, her name was Armina. Let's see if we could go back a couple more. Okay. I'll get right back to her in a minute. This gentleman right here is Baba. He was a Taliban. And so he was a Taliban that fought against the Russians. And so he was at our doorstep when we rented this little place, and he wanted to work for the Americans. And so I asked my interpreter, I said, well, he said, well, Mr. Rich, I got to let you know, he was a Taliban. I said, well, what did he do? He said, well, he fought against the Russians, but now he likes the Americans because you pay more. And so I said, okay, I guess it takes one to know.